To be honest with you, I don't see the Golden State Warriors bringing home another championship.
Y'all gonna sit on First Take. You and Dominique Foxworth are going to sit on First Take and say that Steph Curry will not be in the conversation for a championship in the next 4 years.
The last time we saw him without KD, they were choking down a 3-1 lead in the NBA Finals. The first time in the history of the NBA Finals that a team choked it down. That's what he's the author of. He wrote the book, Steph Curry.
I've got David Robinson. You think not?
No.
Karl Malone,
No.
second all-time leading scorer.
No.
Right? Oh, stop it.
No.
I got Bill Walton.
No.
Oh, stop it.
No.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
I believe I'm on record saying if the Warriors hold on and finish first in the West, it's Curry. But
What?
Yeah, that's what I
There's
think.
no way Steph Curry wins MVP.
All right, man. Something that's always bothered me a little bit with sports is the revisionist history that often happens to athletes as years pass. I always say, yeah, it's true. Numbers don't lie. And I believe that to be an absolute fact. But they don't always tell the full truth. Maybe not exactly now, because we all realize how made of a man Stephen Curry is at this point. But his career is really a prime example of this very thing. Currently, and I hate to really admit this, but it feels like Steph is in that Kobe 2014 LeBron first year with the Lakers stage where it's a slim chance that he can actually contend for titles with the team that he's currently on. But we know Steph's legacy is absolutely sealed, so anything else to me would honestly be icing. In this video, I want to talk about some of the times where Stephen Curry destroyed some of the worst narratives that personally I've ever seen.
Steph Curry's not the most valuable player. If he's the most valuable player, then why are the Warriors favored by 5 tonight on the road against Portland and he's not playing?
Jason Tatum and the Celtics, but mainly JT, because he's the one that I see that actually gets the most shit. They actually have the exact same problem Golden State had in 2016. In 2015, Golden State came out of nowhere and won a championship with this first-time head coach and this MVP that finally had health on his side. Also, you add on some of their additions through the years with Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green finally being a full-time starter, and Klay Thompson taking a significant leap, and this team was really destined for greatness. But for great reasoning and really valid reasoning, their championship, it did come with a lot of skepticism. Golden State, in that specific run, not only faced the Cavs without Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love in the finals, but they really had good fortune on their side for the duration of that entire playoffs. In the first round versus New Orleans, Drew Holiday, who we know is one of the best perimeter defenders, he was injured for that entire series, and Golden State swept them. In the second round, a prime Mike Conley wasn't healthy for all the games, and that series was tight, and Golden State won. In the conference finals, Pat Bev, who was a second-team all-defender, he wasn't there, and the Clippers did blow a 3-1 lead, so it seemed like Golden State, they just had good fortune. Steph also won the MVP that year without the most godly numbers, and that made people question, is this championship, and specifically that MVP, was it really valid? This MVP has always been kinda controversial because if you just look at the numbers, James Harden's pops a little bit more than Steph's. But if you add context, you understand Stephen Curry most definitely earned that MVP. Houston, kinda like Golden State, they did come out of nowhere and had the second best record in the West, and James Harden did have an MVP type season. But Stephen Curry was most definitely the most impactful player that season, and let me break down why. It's not really talked about that much because I guess it's one of their more unsexy, non-flashy championships, but that specific year, Golden State had one of the more dominant seasons ever. That team won 67 games and they were beating teams by 10 points a night. Consequently, Stephen Curry was only playing 32 minutes a game. Up until that point, that was the least amount of minutes played by an MVP ever. Stephen Curry played in 80 games that entire season. You know how many games he actually played in the fourth quarter? 60. That's literally 240 minutes worth of potential stats that Stephen Curry missed out on. That matters. Now, if you actually show the stats in which Stephen Curry played the amount of minutes that James Harden literally averaged, and Stephen Curry was better in every single category. Still, if anyone had any questions as to how dominant Stephen Curry was or how valid that MVP was, the following season answered any questions anyone could possibly have. The 2016 season, to me, kind of gets forgotten about, but it was literally one of the most dominant years ever by any single player. Not only did Stephen Curry join that extremely rare 50-40-90 club, he averaged the most points while doing it, and he's the only player ever to average 30 points while doing it. Also, to show how extremely efficient Steph was, especially with the volume in which he shoots it, the highest three-point percentage from anybody from that club was Steve Nash with 47%. He made 179 threes that year. Stephen Curry was at 45%, and he more than doubled that. That still stands as the most ever. Stephen Curry also had the highest plus minus of anybody in a single season. And to put exactly into context how dominant Steph was from a scoring perspective, Stephen Curry averaged the least amount of free throws and free throw attempts per game from anybody in the history of the NBA to ever average 30 points. It was pure buckets. And if you want to go back to the previous playoff run that was supposedly fluky because he didn't play against these certain players, well, this is what he did against Drew Holiday that year. This is what he did against Mike Conley that year. And this is what he did against James Harden and Pat Bev that year. One of the greatest seasons ever.
It's over for them now. We will never see Steph in another NBA Finals, ever.
The year Stephen Curry got hurt is one of the funniest ever to me. And it goes back to the point how stuff can age, especially when you're gone. And you have to remind people. In 2019-2020, the super team era of Golden State was basically done. Kevin Durant left, Klay Thompson got hurt for basically 2 years, and Stephen Curry ultimately hurt his hand that year. In that event in which Steph was gone, out of sight, out of mind, Dame, one of Steph's, I guess, three-point shooting deep rival point guards, he took over and he had one of his best seasons ever. And to Dame's credit, he was very dominant, averaging 30 points on very efficient splits. But this almost inevitably brought back that narrative of, oh, is Dame actually really better than Stephen Curry when you take Kevin Durant away? Is that real? Mind you, the season prior, KD wasn't even there in the conference finals, and Stephen Curry outplayed Dame in every single way. So I didn't even understand it to begin with, but it came back. I'll never forget in the bubble where Kenny Smith was kinda insinuating it, saying stuff like this.
Hey, Steph.
How do you like that three
Steph,
from, 36 feet?
I don't think you could shoot as deep as him, Steph. I got to see it when you come back.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Steph.
Then the following season when Stephen Curry came back, and if you remember, it's damn near like Steph had to rebrand himself as, bro, I'm Stephen Curry. Y'all remember me, right? He came back that season without Kevin Durant, without Klay Thompson, even without Draymond Green to begin with, and understandably so, he struggled. This is what he looked like after over a year off coming back to a team that he's literally never played with. And you even had high-ranked personalities on TV questioning, was Steph always a little overrated? The sixth game of the year, Steph met the player that actually might be a little bit better than Steph if you take away all the Avengers. And earlier that year when Steph was struggling, Dame did say this.
You know, and Steph playing with a younger team right now, you know, he's saying that it's tough to get those quality looks right now. You know, it's different than what it's looked like, you know, over the last 4 or 5 years for him. So he's trying to get quality looks and get a clean look so he can make a good one. You know, you don't really have that luxury to just like take one from that deep, you know, just to be taking it.
We go play Golden State. This Steph comes out and he is shooting every time, and he is just hitting three after three. I start trying to go back, but this just bang, bang, bang. He running around celebrating. He had like 62.
That season wasn't even just a Dame thing. It feels like everybody questioned, could Steph actually carry a team on his back? And that season specifically, he did.
Steph has never needed to do that. What Russ had to do the year KD left, or the year KD was injured. What Harden had to do his first year in Houston, which is be an offense unto himself. And what I fear we're going to find out this year is that's very good because he can't.
Steph's 2016 unanimous MVP season analytically was probably his best, but the 2021 year, given the context for me, was easily my favorite. Steph has never really been an extremely high volume shooter, and he's never really had to. But once he was asked to, he led the league in scoring and still remained just as efficient. In the last 2 months of that season, an extremely large sample size as Golden State was desperately fighting for their playoff lives, Steph was damn near averaging 40, and in a 24-game sample size, he scored 40 points or more 8 times. I'm not saying Jokic didn't deserve it because Steph didn't even make the playoffs, but Jokic won the MVP that year, and Steph to me felt like the most valuable player. And then the following season, Stephen Curry destroyed one of the dumbest narratives to me that I've seen in the history of any sport ever.
What did we see from Steph? He is publicly on the record as saying, we weren't good enough without him. Well, you're disqualifying your top 10 just by that admission alone.
When Kevin Durant left Golden State, he basically said Steve Kerr's pass-centric ball movement style eventually plateaus, and ultimately you have to mix in some individual play. I never thought he was wrong about that. It might have sounded wrong coming from that messenger because Kevin Durant did benefit heavily from Steve Kerr's system, but in a half-court setting in the playoffs, you do need bucket getters. The problem is, some people made it seem as if Stephen Curry wasn't that dude because Kevin Durant kinda had that role for that Golden State team. Well, the 2022 playoffs, to me, that seized all of that. In the first round of the 2022 playoffs, Kevin Durant met Boston, and KD legitimately had the worst series of his entire career. It's very easy to look back at it now and say, well, Boston should have won that series. They had the better team. But at the time, that was nowhere near the perception. Look at ESPN and their quote-unquote experts' predictions. It was very balanced, and even the people that picked Boston, they picked them in 7. They won in 4 and held Kevin Durant to his least productive series again of his entire career. Stephen Curry not only beat the team that Kevin Durant to me had his worst series of his entire career, he arguably had his best, or at least the most significant by far of his entire career. After being down 2-1 with all the momentum on Boston's side with Game 4 in Boston, he scored 43 points. And his team literally needed every single bucket. Stephen Curry for that game shot 14 for 26. The rest of the starting lineup shot 15 for 43. Even if you look at Game 6, where Golden State had a sizable lead going into the second half, Steph damn near scored half of their second half points to keep their foots on their necks. The whole narrative of Steph not actually being able to be the best player on a championship team, it was done. It was stupid in 2015, and it was completely finished in 2022. Even if you look at their plus minuses when they played together in less games, Steph was always higher. He was, to me, always the more impactful player. With the current team Steph is on right now, I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be able to celebrate him in this fashion. So while I can, before the season even started, that's what I wanted to do in this video. If you guys like this video, the season is literally 1 week away. So turn on post notifications, content will ramp up. Follow my social media sites, do all that great stuff, guys. And until next time, as always, stay tuned.